Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most up-to-date issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. The first South Korea-U.S. joint military drill under the Trump 2.0 administration, the Freedom Shield, wrapped up on March 20th. The 11-day exercise simulated threats from North Korea's shifting strategy, growing ties with Russia, and modern warfare tactics like nuclear and drone attacks. Pyongyang fired a surface-to-air missile and slammed the drills as a provocative nuclear war rehearsal. At the same time, back-to-back high-level visits between North Korea and Russia hint at deepening military cooperation, including arms exports and possible troop deployments. With Washington showing signs of distancing itself from Seoul, concerns are mounting over shifting alliances and what they mean for South Korea's security. For a deeper discussion on this, we invite Evan Servier, former U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State and non-resident senior fellow in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. Welcome.
Good to be with you.
And also joining us is Park Won-gon, Professor of North Korea Studies at Ewha Women's University. Great to see you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start right away. Mr. Revere, so the Freedom Shield exercises concluded a few days ago, and North Korea reacted sharply at the start of the drills, launching several ballistic missiles, but it later shifted to verbal criticism and refrained from launching stronger military provocations during the remainder of the exercise. What's the reason behind this? Why did North Korea, which had warned of, high-intensity provocations, opt for restraint?
Well, I'd be quite reluctant to describe North Korea's response to Freedom Shield as restrained, quite frankly, unless your definition of restraint is the fact that North Korea didn't launch kinetic military action against the South or against the United States. But obviously, there was virtually no chance that North Korea was going to engage in any sort of military provocation or military action in the face of a United States Republic of Korea military exercise that involved significant numbers of forces, highly capable and well-armed forces that were on a high state of alert. So North Korea's response to that exercise, that military exercise, consisted of some, as you noted, some very strong rhetoric in keeping with its normal practice. But at the same time, it combined that rhetoric with some important reminders of North Korea's growing military capabilities. It launched, as you noted, ballistic missiles. It tested a new anti-aircraft missile system in recent days. At the same time, it showed off what it claimed to be a nuclear-propelled, nuclear-powered submarine, which, if that's the case, would be a significant addition to North Korea's arsenal. And also, and this was very troubling, North Korea, in the midst of all of this, gave us a very emphatic reminder of its self-described status as a nuclear weapons state. So that rhetoric included that claim as well. And then, of course, as you noted, we've had some visits, including a visit by a senior Russian official that symbolized the ongoing and growing cooperation, security cooperation and military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang. So all of those things and other developments, including ongoing development of North Korea's nuclear weapons program, I don't describe those things as showing restraint. I describe all of those things as showing a continuing threat and a growing threat that we need to be quite concerned about.
Right. So North Korea was clearly not happy with what was going on.
Exactly.
And on March 21st, the day after the Freedom Shield ended, in fact, North Korea announced it had successfully test-fired its latest surface-to-air missile as well. And there's speculation that this test may have been aimed at verifying performance of missiles intended for export to Russia. Professor Park, do you think this could be considered as an evidence of military technical cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow?
Well, first of all, I basically agree to what just Mr. Veal just mentioned. And we all know that North Korea never ever give up the provocation against South Korea and United States. But this time, a little bit, I see some differences. I mean, when South Korea and United States conduct joint military exercise, North Korea respond with some counter exercise and also multiple missile launches. But this time I haven't seen this kind of activity by North Korea so far. So it seems to be North Korea is just simply wait what the Trump will articulate, Trump administration articulate the North Korean policy. Okay, back to the questions you just asked. As for the surface-to-air missile tests on March 21st, it does not appear to me to be intended for export to Russia. Russia is not in urgent need of the surface-to-air missiles in its war against Ukraine, as Ukraine's air power is relatively limited. On the contrary, it is the North Korea that has a significant weakness in air power. In fact, North Korea's air force is virtually non-existent and lacks the capability to detect, identify, and intercept South Korea-U.S. air power. Therefore, North Korea is likely developing surface-to-air missile system to counter the advanced air power of the U.S. alliance. And it is even possible, and so recently known, that North Korea is trying to get the advanced air defense system from Russia, such as S-200, to compensate for its own shortcomings.
Right, so it's not mainly a focus on its exports to Russia itself. Now, let's delve deeper into North Korea's ties with Russia. On the same day, Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Sergei Shoigu, visited North Korea for a 2-day trip. Mr. Revere, could you explain for our viewers who is this figure and why is his visit so significant?
Well, Shoigu is a very experienced military man. Extensive experience not only as a uniformed officer, but also as defense minister for many years, and now, of course, as head of Russia's Security Council. He is part of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. He's a trusted advisor, someone that Putin can depend upon, and he's played a very high-profile role in the campaign against Ukraine. Such a high-profile role that you may remember when the Wagner Group carried out its ill-fated military action and coup inside Russia. One of their primary targets of criticism was Shoigu because of the role that he has played, and in the view of some, the mismanagement that he was accused of having had as he pursued that campaign against Ukraine. But Putin does rely on him, and he relies on him as his point man to coordinate Russia, North Korea, security cooperation and military cooperation. He's also been in charge of the talks with the North Koreans aimed at soliciting North Korean troop contributions to Russia's war effort against Ukraine. And on previous visits, of course, Shoigu met with Kim Jong-un to discuss security cooperation and Russian assistance to North Korea, as well as North Korean participation in the war against Ukraine. And I believe it's pretty likely that these topics were on Shoigu's agenda with Kim Jong-un during this current visit to North Korea. Just another biographical note, Shoigu is a member of the Turkic cultural and linguistic minority in Russia. He supposedly speaks several languages, including Chinese and Japanese, which is quite impressive. Mm-hmm. But once again, it's his military skills and the respect that many people in the military and many people in Putin's inner circle have for him that explains why he's playing the significant role that he is playing right now.
Right. So thank you for providing us with the background of Shoigu. His presence shows it isn't really just symbolic. It's really strategic alignment between Moscow and Pyongyang seems to be evident. So Shoigu's visit to North Korea came right after Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko's visit in mid-March. Given the timing and scheduling of the visit, some people say that this is quite unusual. Professor Park, what about you? What do you think is the background behind his visit?
Well, I think it is a little bit unusual. You are right. And timing suggests that probably there is some urgent matter may have arisen between Russia and North Korea that required this kind of immediate discussions. There are two main reasons to support these assumptions. First, it is possible that this agreement emerged during the March 15th meeting between the Rudenko and North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Mok-yeon, prompting Putin to take swift action to manage the situation by dispatching Shoigu. Notably, Shoigu's visit lasted only one day and included just 2.5-hour meeting with Kim Jong-un, which is highly unusual in diplomatic terms. And second, North Korea's official media, KCNA, indirectly suggests that substantive issues were under discussion. According to their report on March 22nd, KCNA said that Kim Jong-un and Shoigu confirmed a fully aligned position, and also it emphasized that both leaders expressed their willingness to unconditionally implement the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty, which is signed on June last year. Ironically, North Korea's use of terms like the fully aligned and unconditional implementation may suggest that there has actually been the points of disagreement or delays the implementation behind the scenes. From the North Korean perspective, it seems to me that there could be some growing discomfort with Russia. Pyongyang envisions forming a new cold war bloc with Russia, and of course, they definitely wanted to have China to counter the United States. However, with Trump aiming to draw Russia closer, and Kim Jong-un's vision of this whole new Cold War alignment could be undermined. Additionally, if the Russian-Ukraine war moves toward a resolution, probably some differing views may emerge between Moscow and Pyongyang over the future of these relationships. So that's why Shoigu is immediately sent to the Pyongyang and meet Kim Jong-un.
Professor Park, there's also this speculation that we hear that Kim Jong-un and Secretary Shoigu may have discussed reciprocal compensation for the deployment of North Korean troops. Do you think Russia could provide advanced military technologies like ICBM, re-entry technology, or military reconnaissance satellites in exchange for further troop deployments from North Korea?
Well, about the ICBM, especially North Korea definitely need some technology like a re-entry vehicle technology. But I believe that there are two main reasons Russia is unlikely to transfer it to North Korea. First, Russia has historically been extremely cautious in sharing such sensitive technologies, even with allies or friendly nations. And second, ICBMs are designed to strike U.S. mainland. So if Russia were to transfer that capability, it would provoke a strong reaction from Washington. Since Russia needs to cooperate with the United States to bring the war in Ukraine to an end, it would not risk jeopardizing that by helping North Korea's ICBM program. But you just mentioned about the satellites. It's possible because the last year, May, North Korea suddenly attempted to launch a Malligyong 1-1 satellite, which is a very new type of launch vehicle that employed a more advanced propellant combination compared to the earlier Chollima-1. But we saw that that launch is totally failed. And logically, it would have made more sense for North Korea to use the Chollima-1 launch vehicle, which is successfully tested in 2023. So my question is that why North Korea abruptly switched to an untested, more sophisticated launch vehicle? One likely explanation is that North Korea anticipated a broader national demand for satellite missions, and so to introduce and upgrade launchers. So this shift may have been facilitated by its growing space cooperation with Russia. It's possible that North Korea launch a system directly based on the Russian satellite launch technology.
Right, so they could have military technology exchanges, but not to the extent of ICBM technologies.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Mr. Revere, it's also reported that Shoigu delivered a personal letter from President Putin to Chairman Kim Jong-un, and some say that Kim may have been invited to Russia for Victory Day on May 9th. Though Russia has not made specific comments on this, how much likely do you think is a visit by Kim Jong-un to Russia?
Well, this relationship between Pyongyang and Moscow continues to unfold. Both countries have made a significant investment, if you will, in this relationship, and a logical next step, I think, for this relationship if they wanted to continue the trajectory that that their ties are on, would be, I think, a visit by Kim Jong-un to Moscow in the time frame that you mentioned. So I would not be surprised to see that at all. But in addition to the letter, in addition to a possible invitation, I think the other hot topic, if you will, on the agenda at this point between Moscow and Pyongyang is that the war that Russia is carrying out against Ukraine is moving into a new stage, and a very complicated stage, and I would say even a dangerous stage. And I think one of the topics on the agenda of immediate concern to Moscow is to ensure that the two countries are on the same page when it comes to what Moscow's strategy is in dealing with the United States and in dealing with Ukraine. And if that requires an additional investment by North Korea in additional troops who have played a not insignificant role in the recent rather successful Russian offensive, then it's possible that might have been on the agenda. But these are complicated times when it comes to the Ukraine issue, and I think Professor Pak made some very valid points about the possibility that the two sides are not necessarily on the same page. Hence, the dispatch of somebody that Putin trusts a lot, Mr. Shoigu, to Pyongyang.
Mm-hmm. But even though, if that visit actually happens, it'll be a powerful visual to see Kim and Putin side by side at a military parade, of course. Indeed. Now, last week, North Korea sent government delegations on economy and health to Russia, indicating that bilateral cooperation is expanding across multiple areas. Professor Park, as the peace negotiations in Ukraine seem to show progress, do you think North Korea-Russia partnership would continue to deepen? And also, in the face of deepening ties, how should South Korea respond?
Well, there are two very contrasting scenarios regarding the future of the North Korea-Russian relations. First, it is possible that the two countries will continue to maintain and even deepen their cooperation. For Russia, which is now isolated from the meaningful exchange with the European nations, sustained engagement with North Korea remains a viable option. North Korea, for its part, may continue leveraging ties with Russia to draw China closer, especially as its relationship with Beijing has shown a sign of strength. And second, there is a possibility that their cooperation could gradually weaken. After the war in Ukraine ends, Russia would no longer need the North Korean troops deployments or a steady supply of artillery shells and missiles. Moreover, if Russia seeks to improve relations with the United States as part of the post-war settlement, it may find it increasingly uncomfortable to maintain the same level of cooperation with North Korea, which remains staunchly anti-American. So South Korea should prepare for the both scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Now, on a separate occasion, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence from the U.S., said at the Senate Intelligence Committee that North Korea is ready to conduct additional nuclear tests at any time, and assessed that Chairman Kim Jong-un has no intention of giving up nuclear weapons through talks, through negotiations. Professor Park, this perception is similar to that of the previous Biden administration. What impact does this have on U.S.-North Korea dialogue?
Well, it is widely understood that Kim Jong-un has no intention to giving up his nuclear weapons. And in Washington, the prevailing view is that complete denuclearization of North Korea is no longer a realistic goal. This sentiment was reflected last year when both Republican and Democratic parties omitted complete denuclearization of North Korea from their respective party platforms in July and August. However, this is precisely why we must continue to pursue North Korea's complete denuclearization. As seen in recent U.S.-Japan summit statements and the ROK U.S.-Japan foreign ministers joint communique, it is essential to reaffirm the complete denuclearization of North Korea as the goal of the Trump administration, both through official documents and the statements by the key policymakers. At the same time, South Korea and the United States must continue to effort to strengthen the institutionalized extended deterrence. These ongoing efforts are crucial to reducing the perceived value of North Korea's nuclear arsenal and increasing the chances that Pyongyang will eventually return to the negotiation table. The South Korean government should work in close coordination with the Trump administration and ensure that these elements are incorporated into North Korea's policy.
So we'll really have to see how Trump's 2.0 administration would proceed with his policies on North Korea moving forward. Now, let's also talk about Tulsi Gabbard's recently visit to 4 Asian countries, which is excluding South Korea. And U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is also reportedly excluding South Korea from his Indo-Pacific tour next week. Mr. Revere, do you think this could be seen as a sign of Korea passing becoming a reality? And what kind of measures do you think could be taken?
Well, I think the United States government, U.S. officials remain quite sensitive to the ongoing political crisis that South Korea is going through. And they're also quite sensitive to the uncertainty that continues to prevail in Seoul these days. And with South Korea's leadership situation still somewhat unclear and the future policy direction also not very clear, I'm not surprised that there have not been very many high-level visits by senior U.S. officials. But with Prime Minister Han now restored as acting president, and with a decision on President Yoon's impeachment by the Constitutional Court forthcoming in the next few days, I'm hopeful that with those developments, we're going to start to see a more normal senior level spate of visits between Washington and Seoul, and that I think will be a good thing. But I can't help but say in this context and share with you what I've been sharing with some of my South Korean friends who are concerned about Korea passing. And that is, I've been telling them, be careful what you wish for, because as the Trump administration increasingly turns its attention to Asia and increasingly turns its attention to South Korea, it's not hard to figure out that there are going to be a range of issues, whether it's tariffs, whether it's burden sharing, whether it's how to deal with North Korea, et cetera. There are going to be a range of issues in which Washington and Seoul are not necessarily going to be on the same page. And so I think we may be in for some perhaps troubled waters in the next few weeks or the next few months or so. So people may look on this so-called Korea passing phase as probably a good thing, because it put off the inevitable confrontation between two governments. But I hope that confrontation doesn't come. But as I said, be careful what you wish for.
Right, so we are inevitably having a delay in a confrontation between the U.S. and South Korea. But nevertheless, we have to sort out the political situation here to actually sort this out. Yeah, so we will have to wait and see until how the rulings go by. But as of now, we'll have to wrap up our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Park and Mr. Revere. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.